Okay, so question 25, answering the questions in the role play, like I've been told to. So question 1, I would establish rapport with Mrs. Barrington and make a good first impression, use a professional manner, asking questions like, how long have you been looking for properties? What have you seen so far? Do you have finance approved? Are you needing to sell your current home before you can buy? What time frame you have to move, and what budget you have to buy another place. Question 2, I would explain to Mrs. Barrington that if she's unable to attend the open home due to work, I would be able to organise a private inspection with the sellers. Of course, giving them adequate notice. I'd also advise that private inspections for the property can only be held between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. and arrange a suitable time in that time frame. Question 3, I would advise the trickster to put away personal documents and valuable belongings, open up their windows to let light and air throughout the property, and advise them to remove any clutter to make the property look a lot bigger. Question 4, I would point out the main sales features of the property and ask questions like, what do you like about the property? Is this the sort of property you've been looking for? What aspects of the property do you like? What aspects of the area do you like? And does this property meet your needs? From these answers, I'd be able to determine Mrs. Barrington's interest in the property, whether it's, only a little bit of interest or a lot. Question number 5, I would conduct a sales presentation showing research on the area and the area demographics. I'd try to solely focus on the property whilst highlighting the good aspects of the area. And I'd also, going back to focusing on the property, I'd be highlighting the main features of the property that suit Mrs. Barrington's specific needs. Question 6, I would ask what Mrs. Barrington would pay for the property, if she had an ability to pay a deposit today, and if she was willing to put an offer in writing to the sellers. I'd take my time, working a bit slowly, broaching the questions slowly, and establishing additional rapport to obtain Mrs. Barrington's offer. Question 7, I would inform Mrs. Barrington by phone and email that her offer had been unfortunately rejected. I would then arrange another time to meet with Mrs. Barrington to renegotiate an offer with her, making suggestions for a higher offer whilst building additional rapport, and hopefully then obtaining another offer, a higher offer in writing. Question 8, I would discuss the additional 30-day settlement period and provide pros and cons to this, there's an opportunity to obtain a closer to asking price, whereas a con would be a longer settlement date could result in the buyer backing out, whereas Mrs. Barrington has now increased her offer and is willing to settle within the original 30 days. I would then give the Strix an opportunity to weigh up the pros and cons and decide whether to accept the later settlement date offer or maybe accept Mrs. Barrington's. Question 9, I would revisit both the buyer and seller and remind them of their motivations and take the emphasis off of price completely. Well, at least try to. I would summarise the progress both parties have made so far and then give both the buyer and seller some time out to consider the position. If things are still deadlocked, I'd look at maybe getting my agency principal to come in and get involved, or possibly prepare a compromise. And when discussing these things with both parties, I'd ask questions like, why is the price too low? Why is the offer too low? Or why are you reluctant to increase your offer? Another question could be like, if subject to finance was removed, would you be prepared to, accept a lower offer? And what would it take to get this deal done today? Question 10, I would confirm agreed price of $745,000 and draw up the contract of sale. I would then advise that I would meet with them to arrange the signing of the contract of sale and would email copies to the legal representatives, along with providing copies of the contract of sale to both parties. I would then advise that both parties and their legal representatives would finalise and attend settlement on the date. Okay, question 11. So during the cooling off period, the buyer may terminate the contract, although there is a termination penalty of 0.25% of the purchase price if the buyer terminates. The agent holds the deposit in the agency's trust account, and once settlement has occurred, the deposit will be passed on to the seller minus commission. Mrs. Barrington, at the least, should have building insurance, but due to the fact that she is at risk after 5 p.m, one business day after the contract date she's at risk of anything happening to the property. She should have full house insurance, personally. If Mrs. Barrington is unable to obtain finance, she is able to terminate before the finance date specified on the contract. Although if she doesn't terminate by the finance date, she'll be liable for the property, even if she doesn't have the funds. If the contract of sale goes unconditional, both parties must proceed with the contract regardless of what happens. If a party decides not to proceed with the contract, when it has gone unconditional, there will be legal and financial consequences. If Mrs. Barrington is unable to settle on settlement date, she's in breach of contract, and the seller can terminate the contract and sue Mrs. Barrington for damages. Mrs. Barrington's solicitor will pay the remainder of the purchase price minus the deposit. Her solicitor will check the property transfer paperwork to ensure it's correct and completed. And once it's completed, they will contact the seller's solicitor to advise settlement has been effected. The solicitors will then inform the agent, and I will then ring Mrs. Barrington to inform settlement has occurred and when she's authorised to pick up the keys. Okay, so question number 12. The agent holds the deposit in the agency trust account, and the deposit can only be released after settlement has occurred. Excluded fixtures are fixtures on the property that are not included with the sale, whereas included chattels are items not fixed on the property and are included with the sale. The finance date is the last day that the buyer can pull out of the contract on the grounds of not being able to obtain finance. This protects the buyer in case they're not able to get a loan for the property. The building inspection date is the last day the buyer can terminate the contract based on a poor building or pest inspection report. Again, this protects the buyer if there's some kind of building defect or pest issue that's discovered. The seller's solicitor will ensure that correct amounts have been paid. They'll hand over the transfer forms, release the mortgage if applicable, and any other documents to the buyer's solicitor. After that, the seller's solicitor will ring the seller and me, the agent, to authorise release of keys to the buyer, and then I would ring the seller to confirm settlement, and I would then arrange for deposit monies minus commission to be paid to the seller. And if the Stricts were unable to settle on settlement date, the Stricts can ask for an extended settlement date, but if not agreed to by Mrs. Barrington could terminate the contract and sue for damages. So question 13, I would advise Mrs. Barrington I'm not in the office at present and apologise, but then I would advise her on what time I was expected back into the office. I would advise her that I've arranged for the sales administration assistant at the agency to confirm the sales deposit checklist with me. And once it has been confirmed with me, I would ring Mrs. Barrington to confirm that the deposit has been received and then send her an email with a receipt. Now, question 14. It is a good idea to inspect the property before settlement. I would advise that I can organise that with the Stricts, and then I would go ahead and arrange that. Question 15. I would probably talk to another sales agent, identify 2 or 3 appointments where I could get them to cover if they have the availability, and then arrange for that agent to cover whatever time frame that Mrs. Barrington chooses to set up the next inspection. Number 16, I would give the sales administration assistant the details of like the 2 to 3 appointments that the second sales agent could cover for me. And then I would advise the sales administration assistant to find out what time suits Mrs. Barrington best and then arrange the appointment for that time. Then I'd get her to give me a call or send me a text or something with that appointment time, and I would then let the other agent know that I would need them to cover me. And number 17, I've got the sales deposit checklist here, and so are the seller's details on the checklist? Yes. The buyer's details? Yes. Are the property details on the checklist? Yes. The deposit amount is correct? Yes. Is the property reference correct and the deposit listed correct? Yes. Was the deposit banked to the correct trust account? Yes, it was. Has a receipt been issued within the required time frame? Yes, it has. Does the receipt contain the following information? The date the receipt was generated, the name of the principal agent and their license number, the date the trust money was received, the name of the person completing the receipt and their signature, the name of the person for whom the receipt is being issued, the name of the person on whose behalf the trust money is received, a brief description of why the money is received, the deposit amount in numbers, and the form of payment, whether it be personal check, bank check, cash, EFTPOS, direct deposit. So yes, that's been filled out. Have deposit details been entered into the agency's trust account system? Yes. If requested, has a copy of the receipt been emailed to the buyer? Yes. And have you signed the checklist to confirm the sales deposit process has been met? Yes. And then I've signed and dated it. And that will conclude question 25.